I arrived at my first date with this guy only 2 hours late. As a woman who respects herself, the good stuff should be made to wait. But when I arrived, royal and empowered, he had already left. I was standing in front of my vanity, meticulously applying my third layer of a rose Pout lip gloss, watching the light catch the shimmer just right. People don't understand that being Tiffany isn't just a lifestyle, it's a high-maintenance production that requires a specific level of dedication. Marcus, this guy I'd agreed to meet, should have been thanking his lucky stars that I was even putting in this much effort for a first encounter. A woman of my caliber doesn't just show up like some common employee punching a time clock at a warehouse. I am a brand, a curated experience, and brands require a certain amount of anticipation to maintain their premium status. If a luxury car takes months to deliver, why should my physical presence be any different for a man who hasn't even proven his worth yet? The lighting in my dressing room was finally hitting that golden hour glow, and I knew I couldn't leave until the aesthetic was absolutely flawless. I checked my reflection one last time, admiring how the gloss made my lips look like they were perpetually ready for a close-up. I wasn't being late in the traditional, disorganized sense, I was providing him with the gift of yearning. Most men these days are spoiled by instant gratification, and I felt it was my duty to teach Marcus the value of a high-frequency woman. By the time I finally grabbed my designer clutch and headed out, I felt like a literal goddess descending from Olympus to grace the mortals with her light. The world revolves around energy, and my energy was currently tuned to a frequency that demanded respect and patience. I arrived at the bistro exactly 120 minutes after our scheduled time, which I felt was the perfect window to establish the social hierarchy of our potential relationship. Walking through those doors, I didn't feel a shred of guilt because, honestly, the anticipation should have been making his heart race. I expected to see him sitting there, perhaps a bit nervous, looking at the door every time it opened with a desperate hope in his eyes. That kind of devotion is what I deserve, and I was ready to reward his long wait with the sheer brilliance of my company. I had practiced my sorry I'm late smile, the one that isn't actually an apology but more of a you're welcome for the wait gesture. I scanned the room, looking for the most prominent table where a man of his supposed taste should have been waiting. Instead of the adoring gaze I expected, I found myself staring at a small, empty table tucked away in a corner that didn't even have good lighting for photos. I flagged down a waiter, someone who looked like he'd never even heard of a skincare routine, and asked for Marcus by name. The man looked at me with this incredibly mundane expression and told me, the gentleman left after 20 minutes. I actually had to pause for a second to process that level of sheer disrespect and lack of vision. 20 minutes? That is barely enough time for the atmosphere to settle, let alone for someone like me to make a grand entrance. It was as if he treated our date like a routine doctor's appointment or a quick oil change rather than a momentous social event. I stood there for a moment, feeling the absolute audacity of his departure wash over me like a cold wave of low vibrational energy. He clearly doesn't understand how high-value women operate in a world where image and status are the only real currencies. My presence is an event, a milestone in a man's social calendar, and he discarded it as if it were a mere inconvenience. I could feel the eyes of the other patrons on me, and I knew I had to pivot the narrative immediately to maintain my brand's integrity. I wasn't going to let his lack of stamina ruin my curated evening or my perfectly applied makeup. If Marcus wanted to behave like a man who can't handle the weight of a queen, that was his loss, not mine. I decided to sit down anyway, choosing a table that actually had a decent backdrop for my social media content. I ordered a signature cocktail, something pink and expensive that would look incredible in a story post, and took a moment to adjust my hair. I took a series of selfies, making sure to capture the unbothered and thriving vibe that defines my current era. If Marcus had stayed, he could have been the one taking these photos of me, earning the right to be seen with me on his own feed. Instead, he chose to run away, probably intimidated by the sheer scale of the person he was supposed to meet. I sipped my drink, feeling a sense of pity for him and his clearly limited understanding of how the world actually works for people of my status. The cocktail was delicious, though the presentation could have been slightly more Instagrammable, if the staff actually cared about their aesthetic. I sat there, radiating power and elegance, making sure that everyone in the bistro knew I was the most important person in the room. It's funny how people who don't have a schedule always seem to be the most obsessed with punctuality, as if their time actually has some intrinsic value. My time is an investment, and if Marcus wasn't willing to put in the work to secure that investment, he didn't deserve the payout. I watched the door for a while, half expecting him to come back and apologize once he realized the magnitude of his mistake. But the door only opened for people who looked like they'd never even seen a ring light in their lives. I finished my drink and paid the bill, feeling a strange sense of accomplishment despite the fact that I'd been stood up by a man with no patience. In my mind, I hadn't been stood up at all, I had simply performed a character test that Marcus had failed miserably. It's better to know now that he lacks the emotional intelligence to handle a woman of my stature than to find out months down the line. I walked out of the bistro with my head held high, my heels clicking against the pavement with a rhythmic authority that screamed, main character. The city lights seemed to twinkle just for me, validating my decision to prioritize my own image over a stranger's arbitrary timeline. I had my photos, I had my cocktail, and I still had my dignity, which is more than I can say for Marcus. He'll probably go home and tell his friends some exaggerated story about how I didn't show up on time, completely ignoring the fact that perfection takes effort. Men like him always try to flip the script when they can't meet the standards of a high-frequency lifestyle. They call it disrespect because they're too insecure to call it a worth, and that's a tragedy I'm just not interested in being a part of. My life is a masterpiece in progress, and I don't have room for people who want to rush the brushstrokes. If he wanted a woman who shows up at 7 p.m. sharp, he should have dated a librarian or a transit worker. I am an influencer in the making, and influencers operate on their own divine timing. As I got into my rideshare, I started drafting a post about knowing your worth and not settling for men who don't respect your process. It's important to educate my followers on these things, to show them that being a high-value woman means setting boundaries that others might find inconvenient. I looked at the selfies I'd taken at the bistro and felt a surge of confidence. I looked incredible, and that was the only truth that mattered. Marcus is just a footnote in the grand story of my rise to the top, a small obstacle that I've already cleared with grace and style. I'm moving forward, focusing on my brand and my growth, while he's probably still stuck in a cycle of punctuality and mediocrity. Tomorrow is a new day to manifest even better opportunities with men who actually understand what it means to wait for the best. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says, waiting 2 hours for a first date isn't high value, it's just rude. His time is just as valuable as yours, maybe even more since he actually values it. OP's reply, punctuality is for people without a busy schedule or a personal brand to maintain. My time is an investment that requires a certain level of commitment from others. Anonymous user 2 says, Marcus dodged a bullet. If he can't even get you to show up on time for a first impression, imagine the nightmare of a long-term relationship. OP's reply, exactly, if he can't wait for the good stuff, he clearly can't provide the lifestyle a woman like me requires. It was a successful filter. Update 1. It's been 3 days since my last update, and I've spent that time reflecting on Marcus's lack of emotional maturity. I decided that, as a leader in my community, I should give him one final chance to apologize for his behavior at the bistro. I sent him a voice note. It was about 5 minutes long, very detailed and analytical, explaining the concept of latency as a character test. I told him that my being late wasn't a mistake, but a calculated move to see if he had the patience to handle a woman of high status. I even used some of my favorite energy keywords to help him understand that his departure was a failure of his own internal frequency. I expected a long, repentant message in return, or at least a request for a second chance to prove he's changed. Instead of a thoughtful response, he didn't even bother to type a single word in reply to my intellectual breakdown. He just liked the message with a generic heart emoji and didn't follow up with anything else, which is the height of digital audacity. It felt like a microaggression, a way for him to dismiss my profound insights without having to engage with the truth of my words. I was sitting in a boutique hotel lobby having brunch when I saw the notification, and I almost dropped my avocado toast in shock. How can someone be so emotionally stunted that they can't even respond to a direct explanation of their own shortcomings? It's clear that he's trying to play it cool to stay relevant in my notifications, but it just makes him look desperate and unrefined. Since then, I've been very active on my stories, posting quotes about low-frequency men and the importance of knowing your worth in a world of mediocrity. I've been tagging all the high-end locations I visit, making sure he sees that my life hasn't slowed down one bit just because he couldn't wait a couple of hours. I want him to see exactly what he's missing out on: the glamour, the access, and the sheer magnetic pull of my lifestyle. I even shared a few slides about the narcissism of punctuality, which I think really hit the nail on the head regarding his behavior. It's important to frame the narrative correctly so that my followers don't get the wrong idea about why I'm currently single. However, I've noticed something a bit strange over the last 48 hours that I can't quite put my finger on. Some of our mutual friends, people I've known for a while and who usually engage with every single one of my posts, have gone silent. I noticed that my story views from that specific circle have dropped significantly, and none of them are liking my latest, high-value reels. It's a bit annoying because I put a lot of effort into the lighting and the captions for those specific posts. I'm assuming they just haven't seen them yet due to some weird glitch in the algorithm that's suppressing my content. There's no other logical reason why they would suddenly stop interacting with a brand as vibrant as mine. I'm starting to wonder if Marcus has been whispering some distorted version of events to them behind my back. Men who can't handle a woman's power often resort to gossip and character assassination to make themselves feel better about their own failures. He's probably telling everyone that I was disrespectful just because I have a different relationship with time than he does. It's a classic move from someone who feels threatened by a person with a larger social footprint and a more defined sense of self. But I'm not worried about it. The truth always comes out, and my friends will eventually see through his petty games. They're probably just intimidated by my rapid growth and my refusal to settle for anything less than excellence. I spent the afternoon at a spa, getting a facial and trying to realign my chakras after all this low vibrational nonsense. It's exhausting having to constantly defend your status against people who just don't get the vision. I took a video of myself in the silk robe, looking serene and enlightened, and posted it with a caption about rising above the noise. I hope Marcus sees it and realizes that while he's stuck in his rigid, time-obsessed world, I'm literally glowing from the inside out. He had the chance to be part of this energy, and he threw it away because he couldn't sit at a table for a little while. Some people are just destined to live small lives, and I have to accept that I'm meant for something much bigger. I'm planning to do a live tonight to talk about setting boundaries with low-effort men, and I'm expecting a big turnout. My audience needs to hear this, especially now that I've lived through such a blatant example of what to avoid. I'll make sure to mention the bistro incident without naming names, just to keep it professional and on brand. It's all about the teachable moment, and I'm the best teacher there is when it comes to self-respect. I'll show them that a woman who respects herself never apologizes for her timeline, no matter what the rules of dating say. We are the ones who make the rules, and it's time the world caught up with that reality. I've also been looking into some new collaboration opportunities with local brands to boost my visibility even further. I need to make sure my influence is undeniable so that no one can ever question my position in this city again. I'm thinking about a series of day in the life videos that highlight just how much work goes into maintaining my aesthetic. People need to see the hours of hair, makeup, and content planning that happen before I ever step foot outside. Maybe then they'll understand why showing up on time is a physical impossibility for someone with my level of responsibility. It's about education, and I'm dedicated to the cause of my own elevation. I haven't heard anything else from Marcus, which is honestly for the best, though a small part of me wanted him to keep trying. It's always entertaining to watch a man scramble when he realizes he's lost access to a premium experience. But he's clearly chosen the path of silence, which is just another form of cowardice in my professional opinion. He's probably sitting at home right now, checking his watch and wondering why his life feels so empty and scheduled. Meanwhile, I'm manifesting new connections and higher-level opportunities that don't involve waiting for anyone's approval. I am my own approval, and that's the most powerful position anyone can be in. The sun is setting now, and I'm getting ready for my live, making sure the ring light is at the perfect angle. I feel a sense of peace knowing that I'm staying true to my brand and my values, even when the world tries to push back. I'm a warrior for high-value women everywhere, and this Marcus situation is just a minor skirmish in a much larger war. I'll keep posting, I'll keep glowing, and I'll keep making everyone wait until I'm good and ready. That is the essence of my power, and I won't let anyone take it away from me. Stay tuned, because the best is yet to come, and it's going to be worth every single second of the wait. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, a 5-minute voice note explaining why you were 2 hours late? And he just liked it? That man is a legend. He gave you exactly the amount of energy you deserve. OP's reply, it's a microaggression. He's trying to stay relevant in my notifications without actually doing the work to reconcile. He's obsessed but scared. Anonymous user 2 says, the fact that your mutual friends are ghosting your posts is a huge red flag. Maybe they finally realized you're the one being below frequency? OP's reply, they are probably just intimidated by my growth and my refusal to settle. People often distance themselves when they can't match your vibration. Update 2. It's been 1 week since my last update, and the social atmosphere in this city has felt strangely heavy, almost like there's a conspiracy of silence. I knew there was a gallery opening last night, a very high-profile event, and I was certain Marcus would be there with his little group of followers. I spent 4 hours getting ready, choosing an outfit that screamed unattainable, while still being perfectly on trend for a contemporary art crowd. I planned my entrance for exactly 10:30 p.m., even though the event started at 8 o'clock, because main character energy requires the crowd to be fully settled. I wanted the room to feel the shift in the air the moment I walked in, that collective gasp when the real star finally arrives. I even had a friend film my walk from the car to the entrance so I could post it later with some dramatic music. When I finally stepped into the gallery, I paused at the top of the stairs, expecting a flurry of activity or at least a few heads to turn in my direction. For a split second, the room did go quiet, but then everyone just went back to their conversations as if I were just another person entering the building. It was incredibly jarring, like walking into a room where the laws of social physics had suddenly stopped working for me. I felt a slight pang of annoyance, but I quickly rationalized it as a form of collective awe. They were so stunned by my presence that they didn't know how to react. I pulled out my lip gloss and began to retake it, using the reflection in a nearby silver sculpture to check my angles and make sure I was still perfect. I spotted Marcus across the room, surrounded by a group of people I recognized from our mutual circle, and I decided it was time to reclaim my narrative. I walked up to them with a confident stride, maintaining my unbothered expression, and stood just at the edge of their circle. I waited for Marcus to look up, to see the woman he'd been foolish enough to walk away from, but he didn't even glance in my direction. He was deep in a conversation about some new architectural project, laughing and gesturing as if I were nothing more than background noise. The sheer level of disrespect was staggering. He was clearly using the grey rocka method because he's so obsessed with me that he can't even look at me without crumbling. I tried to gracefully interrupt their conversation, waiting for a slight pause to drop a witty comment about the art on the walls. I moved closer, almost bumping into one of my so-called friends, and said something about how the lighting in the gallery was low vibrational compared to my recent shoot. One of the girls in the group, someone I've shared drinks with a dozen times, actually looked me in the eye with a cold, dismissive stare. "Tiffany, we're in the middle of something," she said, her voice completely devoid of the warmth she usually shows me. "And we're actually heading out soon to grab some food together." They didn't even invite me, which is a level of social exclusion I haven't experienced since middle school. I stood there, clutching my designer clutch so hard my knuckles turned white, while they all turned back to each other and continued their conversation. It was as if I had become a ghost in my own social circle, a person whose presence was no longer required or even acknowledged. I felt a heat rising in my neck, but I refused to let them see me sweat. A brand doesn't break down in public, no matter how much the market fluctuates. I watched them walk away a few minutes later, Marcus leading the way without a single backward glance, leaving me standing alone in front of a painting I didn't even like. I took a quick selfie to prove I was there, but my smile felt a bit tighter than usual, and the lighting really was as bad as I'd thought. I left the gallery shortly after, feeling a mixture of fury and confusion that I struggled to process within my usual framework of high-value logic. How could they all be so blind to the fact that I am the center of this social ecosystem? It's clear that Marcus has poisoned the well, using his mediocre charm to turn everyone against the one person who actually brings status to the group. They're all just followers, content to stay in their safe, predictable little bubble while I'm out here actually manifesting a future. Their rejection isn't about me, it's about their own inability to handle someone who refuses to play by their boring, time-bound rules. I'm too much for them, and they've decided that the easiest way to deal with that is to pretend I don't exist. I spent the rest of the night scrolling through my phone, looking for any sign that someone had posted about the event and mentioned me. Not a single person tagged me, and in the group photos Marcus posted later, I could see them all laughing at some restaurant I've never been to. It's a classic case of a mob mentality, where a group of insecure people clings to each other to avoid facing the reality of their own insignificance. They think they're hurting me by excluding me, but they're really just depriving themselves of the energy I bring to every room. I'm a force of nature, and you can't ignore a storm forever, no matter how hard you try to hide in a burger joint. I've decided that I need to pivot my strategy. If this circle is too small-minded to appreciate me, I'll just have to build a new one. I'm going to start focusing more on my global audience and less on these local friends, who clearly have no loyalty to the brand. I'll show them that I don't need their gallery openings or their group dinners to be the most important person in this city. I'm going to double down on my high value of content, making it even more exclusive and harder to access. If they want to treat me like background noise, I'll just make sure my volume is so high they have no choice but to listen. It's all about the comeback, and my second act is going to be legendary. I took a bath with rose petals and expensive oils, trying to wash off the negative energy of the evening and refocus on my own path. I looked at my reflection in the mirror afterward and reminded myself that I am a queen, and queens don't worry about the opinions of peasants. Marcus and his little group are just temporary distractions on my way to total social domination. They can have their casual dinners and their architectural talks. I'm building an empire that doesn't rely on anyone's invitation. I'll be fine, better than fine. I'll be iconic, while they're all forgotten. The silence in the room was a bit loud, but I just turned up my curated playlist and focused on my next move. I'm thinking about hosting my own event, something so exclusive that they'll all be begging for an invite in a week's time. I'll show them what real main character energy looks like when it's fully unleashed and directed by a professional. I'll make sure the lighting is perfect, the guests are curated, and the timing is exactly what I say it is. They think they can freeze me out, but I'm the one who controls the temperature in this social circle. Tomorrow, I start planning the most important night of the season, and Marcus won't even be on the guest list. He can stay in his gray rock world while I'm out here shining like the diamond I am. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, that gallery entrance sounded like a scene from a movie where the villain realizes they're not the main character anymore. They weren't odd, they were just over your drama. OP's reply, they were obviously stunned into silence. Silence is a form of awe that most people are too intimidated to break in the presence of greatness. Anonymous user 2 says, Marcus completely ignoring you while you're retaking your gloss is the ultimate power move. He's totally over it, Tiffany. OP's reply, he's using the gray rock method because he's literally obsessed and can't handle his emotions. It's a defense mechanism for men who know they've failed. Update 3. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and I decided to take matters into my own hands to reset the social hierarchy that Marcus has been trying to disrupt. I planned an exclusive influence dinner at my own house, a curated evening where I would be the absolute focal point of everything. I sent out the invitations via a broadcast list to everyone in our circle, setting the official start time for 9 p.m. to give it an air of late-night sophistication. However, I plan to make my own grand entrance into my living room at 11 p.m., because even in my own home, the host should be the final and most anticipated arrival. I spent a literal fortune on high-end catering, a private bartender, and a playlist that I'd spent days curating to match my current ascended vibe. By 10 p.m., I was upstairs in my suite, finishing my look and listening for the sounds of a growing crowd and the clinking of glasses. But the house was strangely quiet, lacking the vibrant buzz of a high-status gathering that I'd so carefully prepared for. I peeked over the banister and saw only 2 people, a couple of social leeches I barely recognize who were clearly just there for the free vintage champagne. My heart sank for a moment, but I quickly pushed the feeling down. It was probably just a logistical issue with the ride shares in this part of town. I checked my phone, expecting a flood of, I'm on my way, texts or excuses from people who were running late to my event. Instead, my notifications were almost entirely empty, save for a few automated emails from brands I'm trying to partner with. I felt a sudden, sharp instinct to check Marcus's social media stories, a sign that something was fundamentally wrong with the energy of the night. What I saw made my blood run cold and my vision blur with a white-hot sense of betrayal. Everyone, literally every single person from our core social circle, was at some trashy, casual dive bar downtown with Marcus. There was no dress code, no value, no curated aesthetic, just a bunch of people eating cheap burgers and drinking domestic beer out of plastic cups. They were all laughing, taking blurry photos, and looking genuinely happy in a way that felt like a direct insult to the elegance I provide. It was a complete rejection of everything I stand for, a descent into the lowest common denominator of social interaction. As I scrolled through the stories, I noticed something even more devastating, a video of the whole group huddled around a phone, roaring with laughter. My heart stopped when I recognized the audio playing in the background. It was my 5-minute voice note to Marcus about latency and character tests. He had actually shared my private, intellectual property with the entire group, turning my profound insights into a punchline for a drunken night at a bar. The humiliation was physical, a tightening in my chest that made it hard to breathe, but I refused to let the 2 leeches downstairs see me break. He violated my intellectual property and my personal brand in the most low-frequency way possible, proving exactly why he never deserved me. I realized in that moment that Marcus didn't just walk away from our date, he had launched a full-scale campaign to dismantle my reputation. He's using my own words against me, twisting my high-value logic into something crazy, just to make himself look like a victim of my standards. It shows how much he truly fears my narrative and the power I have to redefine the social rules of this city. By making me a joke, he's trying to neutralize the threat I pose to his mediocre way of life. But I'm not a joke, I'm a pioneer, and pioneers are always mocked by the people who are too afraid to follow them into the future. I sat on the edge of my bed, surrounded by my expensive perfumes and designer clothes, and felt a profound sense of isolation. The 2 people downstairs eventually left around 10:45, probably realizing that no one else was coming and the champagne was running low. I was left alone in a house filled with enough gourmet food to feed 30 people and a playlist that was now just echoing through empty rooms. I walked through the house, looking at the perfect floral arrangements and the ambient lighting that no one was there to admire. I felt like a queen in a deserted kingdom, a ruler with no subjects left to govern because they'd all run off to join a peasants' revolt. It was a sobering moment, but I refused to call it a failure. I decided to frame it as a pivoting era. Quality over quantity has always been my motto, even if the quality tonight was just me and my reflection. I spent the rest of the night deleting every photo of those friends from my phone, cutting the dead weight from my digital life once and for all. If they want to spend their time at dive bars with a man who has no vision, they are welcome to stay in the gutter where they belong. I don't need a circle of followers who are so easily swayed by cheap burgers and a leaked voice note. I am a solitary goddess now, moving into a phase of my life where my energy is reserved strictly for those who have earned the right to witness it. The silence of the house was heavy, but I filled it with the sound of my own voice, reminding myself of who I am. I'm currently looking into moving to a different neighborhood, or maybe even a different city, where the people have a higher level of social awareness. This city has become a toxic wasteland of low vibrational gossip, and I'm too valuable to waste any more time trying to save it. I'll start fresh, build a new brand from the ground up, and this time, the entrance requirements will be even stricter. Marcus can have his little victory for now, but he doesn't realize that he's just freed me from a group of people who were holding me back. I'm an eagle, and eagles don't fly with pigeons, especially not pigeons who hang out at dive bars. The sun started to come up as I was finally finishing the cleanup, and I felt a strange sense of clarity amidst the ruins of my party. I'm moving into my solitary goddess era, a time of intense self-focus and extreme exclusivity that will make my previous brand look like a starter kit. I'll use this time to show my power, to prove that I don't need anyone else to maintain my status or my glow. The world hasn't seen anything yet, and when I finally decide to re-emerge, the wait will be legendary. Marcus thinks he's won, but he's just given me the ultimate motivation to become even more unattainable than I already was. I'm going to spend the next few weeks offline, mostly, just to let the mystery build and the gossip die down on its own. People always want what they can't have, and right now, they can't have me at all. I'll let them wonder where I am, what I'm doing, and who I'm with, while I'm quietly planning my next move. The voice note incident was a violation, yes, but it was also a testament to how much space I occupy in Marcus's head. He couldn't just move on, he had to share me with the world because I'm the most interesting thing that's ever happened to him. I'll take that as a compliment and move on to bigger and better things, leaving him and his burgers in the rearview mirror. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, he shared the voice note at a dive bar while everyone was eating burgers? That is the most brutal social execution I've ever heard of. Your intellectual property is just a comedy script now. OP's reply, he violated my privacy because he's terrified of my narrative. It shows how much I still control his emotions, even if he pretends otherwise. Anonymous user 2 says, a dinner party for 30 people and only 2 showed up? At your own house. It might be time to admit that your exclusive brand has a market value of 0. OP's reply, quality over quantity. I'm pivoting to a more solitary goddess era where my energy is no longer available to the masses. It's an intentional shift. Update 4. It's been 1 month since my last update, and I'm currently sitting at a high-end cafe, fully dressed up in my most powerful ensemble. I've been here for 3 hours now, meticulously retaking my lip gloss every 5 minutes to ensure I'm camera ready at all times. I invited 3 different acquaintances, people I thought had potential for a high-level collaboration, to meet me here for a strategy session. I set the time for noon, but of course, I didn't plan to actually start the meeting until 2 p.m. to maintain my hierarchy. But it's now 3 p.m., and not a single one of them has shown up, nor have they sent a text to explain their absence. It's as if I've become completely invisible in this city, a brand that everyone has decided to stop following at the exact same time. I keep checking my phone, hoping for a notification, a like, or even a spam message to break the silence of my screen. But the only alerts I get are from apps telling me my storage is full or that there's a sale on a website I no longer frequent. Marcus and everyone else from that old, mediocre circle have completely blocked me or restricted my access to their lives. I tried to look at some of their profiles from a burner account, but they've all gone private, or they've scrubbed any mention of me from their digital history. I tried to post a video earlier this morning about the power of silence and the beauty of being a solitary goddess, but it's been up for 6 hours and has 0 likes. Not even a pity like from one of those bot accounts that usually follow me, just a flat, digital 0. I used my time to show my power, to prove that I could survive and thrive without the validation of the masses. But now, it seems the world has finally decided to give me exactly what I asked for all the time in the world, completely alone. I sit here with my perfectly applied makeup and my expensive coffee that's long since gone cold, looking out the window at a city that doesn't seem to notice I'm here. I used to think that making people wait was the ultimate sign of respect, a way to measure my own worth against their patience. Now, I'm the one waiting, and there's no one left to even acknowledge the delay. It's a strange, hollow feeling, like being a masterpiece locked in a vault that no one has the key to anymore. I'm still royal, I'm still empowered, and I'm still high value, but a brand with no audience is just a beautiful, empty package.